Good morning, children. Sai Ram. Welcome back to part 3 of Geography, Chapter 4 Air. So, students, in the last two videos, we learned about atmosphere. We learned about composition of atmosphere, structure of atmosphere, air pressure. So, in this video, we are going to learn, or rather, we are going to start the video with winds. So, what exactly is wind? The movement of air from high pressure area to low pressure area. Right? This is what we called as wind. So, now let us understand what causes wind. The uneven heating of Earth's surface by sun causes temperature differences in air. The warm air rises, creating areas of low pressure. Cool air sinks, creating areas of high pressure. Air moves from the areas of high pressure towards the area of low pressure. Now let us look at this in detail. As I said, air blows from a high pressure region to a low pressure region. Air that moves horizontally is called wind. The vertical movement of air is called air current. Wind is named after the direction from which it blows. Now, for example, if the wind blows from the western side, it is called the west wind. Due to Earth's rotation, wind is deflected towards the right in the northern hemisphere and left in the southern hemisphere. The speed of the wind also varies greatly. If there is a quick change in atmospheric pressure, it causes the wind to blow fast and vice versa. The direction of wind is found with the help of wind vane. The speed of wind is measured with an anemometer. The direction and the speed of the wind are never fixed. We can broadly classify winds into three major types. Now let us have a look at them. As I said, air flows from high pressure to low pressure systems to try to reach the equilibrium. So wind can be broadly classified or divided into three types: permanent or planetary winds, seasonal or periodic winds, and local winds. Now children, let us look at the first type of wind, that is permanent or planetary winds. Now some winds blow constantly in a particular direction throughout the year. These winds are known as prevailing winds or permanent winds or planetary winds. These winds originate due to the presence of permanent high pressure and low pressure belts on the surface of the earth. The main types of planetary winds are the trade winds, the westerlies, and the polar winds. Now let us look at the second type of wind, that is periodic winds or seasonal winds. Okay, so children, certain winds, they have tendency to reverse their direction periodically. Now let us understand the difference here. Planetary winds, they blow constantly in a particular direction throughout the year, but these periodic winds, they reverse their direction for a particular period or for a particular time, year maybe. Okay, so such winds are called periodic winds. They are caused by unequal heating and cooling of the Earth's surface and the localized difference in the atmospheric pressure. The main types of periodic winds are monsoon winds and lands and sea breezes. Now children, I am not going into detail into all these different types of periodic winds or types of planetary winds, etc., as you don't have it in your syllabus for this year. Now we move on to the next type, that is local winds. Children, in many parts of the world, winds with special characteristics blow over small areas. These winds blow for a short time. Such winds are called the local winds. Most of them are seasonal and their names are usually derived from regional languages. Some of these winds are Lu, Chinook, Harmattan, etc. Now children, let us learn about major pressure belts and wind system. We shall learn about the various pressure belts and wind patterns that have developed on planet Earth. While understanding the basic concepts behind development of pressure belts, we are not going to take into consideration the tilt of the axis and the influence of land-water distribution. So we all know that equator divides the globe into southern hemisphere and northern hemisphere, right? The equatorial belt, it extends 5 degrees north and 5 degrees south. Look at this picture here. This is the picture of major pressure belts and wind system, which is on page number 25 of your geography textbook. So we can see that this is the blue colored thing in between is the equatorial low pressure. Okay, basically equator, it is 5 degrees towards northern and hemisphere and 5 degrees towards southern hemisphere. Okay, the blue one in between, I am talking about that. Now equatorial region receives nearly vertical rays of sun, and this heats the air near the equator. So children, when the temperature increases, the pressure decreases. So along the equator we have low pressure and we call this region as equatorial low pressure belt. Now the warm air starts rising up and towards the troposphere. Okay, and as the air starts rising up, the warm air starts rising up, the temperature drops after rising to a certain point. It stops rising up because it becomes cooler and it is obstructed by the tropopause. So the air spreads out and moving in the southern and the northern direction. Okay, so the air, it spreads and moves towards the southern and the northern direction. So as the air is moving, it becomes denser and after a certain point it sinks down to the surface. So at around 30 degrees north and south we have sinking air. Now this sinking air is cool air, so it forms high pressure belt, and these regions are called subtropical high pressure belt. Now because these regions lie outside tropical region and at the same time adjoining tropical region, so which is why they are called subtropical high pressure belts. The sinking air now moves towards the north and south. So along the equator the warm air rises, spreads out, cools and sinks down. So in this way it develops convectional currents. At the poles, the sun rays are not very much inclined. So we have cold air that sinks. These regions are known as polar highs. In the northern hemisphere, the air moves towards the south and southern hemisphere, and the air also moves towards the northern hemisphere. So now at this point we have air coming from north and south. So at this point the air converges up and rises up. These regions are known as subpolar lows. So at 60 degrees latitude we have low pressure system because we have air rising. Along the equator, air is rising because of the convection, and at the subpolar lows we have air rising because of the convergence. Now these rising airs also spreads out, cools and sinks. Same thing happens in the southern hemisphere as well. On the surface of the earth along the equator, winds move from high pressure regions to low pressure regions, that is from subtropical high to equatorial lows in the northern and the southern hemisphere. Now these winds bend to the right in the northern hemisphere, and in the southern hemisphere the winds bend to the left, and this is described as the Coriolis effect. The winds bend to the right and the left in the northern and southern hemisphere respectively because the earth is spherical in shape and the earth rotates from west to east. In the same way, in between 30 degrees and 60 degrees north and south, the wind bends towards left and right in the northern and southern hemisphere respectively. Even at the polar region, the same phenomena can be seen. Now let us move on to the next part of the chapter, that is moisture. So what is moisture? What do we understand by moisture? Moisture is the presence of a liquid, especially water, often in trace amounts. Small amounts of water may be found, for example, in air, in food, or in some commercial products. Moisture also refers to the amount of water vapor present in the air. Moisture in the atmosphere exists in solid, liquid, and gaseous states. The amount of moisture present in the air varies from place to place and from time to time. The air in the equatorial region has more moisture than other regions of the world. The air has more moisture during the summer season than during the winter season. The amount of moisture decreases with the increase in the height above the mean sea level. The amount of moisture is almost zero in the cold air of the polar regions during the winter months. With this, I end this third part of lesson number 4 of geography. But before that, let us see what we have done in today's video. We started off with the topic wind. The movement of the air from high pressure area to low pressure area is called wind. Then we understood that there are 3 types of winds, which is the permanent, seasonal, and local winds. Then we learnt about moisture. Moisture in air at any time is known as humidity. This I end this third part of Geography chapter 4. See you in the concluding part, which is part 4 of the same chapter. Till then, goodbye and take care.